Welcome to Tribal Economic Development, a podcast highlighting best practices for creating, implementing, and sustaining plans that lead to success in Indian country. We are Waséyabek, an economic development firm dedicated to creating a sustainable path forward for the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi. In our first 7 years of operation, we've grown from 0 revenue and 3 employees to more than $150 million in revenue and a team of more than 650. Along the way, we've learned many valuable lessons. Here, we'll share those lessons with you. And now, our hosts, Deidra Mitchell, Waséyabek President and CEO, and Erika Weiss, Assistant General Counsel.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode and our final episode of 2025 of Tribal Economic Development, Waséyabek podcast. I am Erika Weiss, your co-host here with Deidra Mitchell. Hey, Deidra.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited for today's podcast.
Yeah. Who do we have with us today?
We have to my immediate left, Kip Ritchie. He is a longtime friend. He is the CEO of Potawatomi Ventures and has been with their economic development arm for 30 years. So a well-seasoned professional, and like I said, a dear friend. Julio Martinez, also a dear friend. I've known Julio for about 10 years. You've been with Mno-Bmadsen as CEO for about 10 years, correct?
I started as CFO, so
that's right.
5 years and 5 years, basically.
Okay. But been with Mno for about 10 years, but worked with tribes previous to that, so long career in Indian country.
My entire adult life, 30 plus years in Indian country.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to be talking about due diligence today, and that is one of the many things that we do as leaders of these economic development firms. We're teachers, we're mentors, we're visionaries, we're a liaison between our staff and the board and maybe the tribal council. There's a lot of things that we manage, but one of the most important things we do is if your tribe does acquisitions, you have a due diligence process, and we're involved in running that due diligence process. So we're going to talk about the similarities and differences maybe today and get a little insight into that. So thank you both for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. And as we jump in, just talking about, as Deidra mentioned, we're going to talk about due diligence today, a topic that all of us are intimately familiar with, better or worse. So just for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with what due diligence is, the purpose of due diligence in an acquisition is to really kind of kick the tires of the target company that you are looking to acquire. Make sure that they do what they say they do, their financials are what they say their financials are, and just really make sure that you're getting the value that you're paying for in an acquisition. So we are going to just dive right in. As Deidra mentioned, there are some similarities and differences. And as we've kind of talked about through the course of this podcast, while there are a lot of similarities amongst tribes and tribal economic development companies, there are also a lot of differences. So let's just start with the process, your acquisition process. Julio, why don't you kick us off and just give us a little bit of insight on how Mno-Bmadsen does acquisitions and runs through their due diligence process.
Thank you, Erika. So I guess I would say step one is finding the target, the acquisition target, which we call deal sourcing. And we have, now having a portfolio of a number of companies, we look for both additions or bolt-ons or complementary acquisitions to our existing portfolio companies, or we look for a new vertical in another industry that we're not currently in. So that's the beginning. Once we acquire or find a target, we start the due diligence process. So that's kind of the beginning of it. And our process generally is the staff vets the acquisition target first, does the pre-due diligence, I'll call it. And here's where we're just using staff resources, where we have subject matter experts. We use our subject matter experts in our different companies. Where we don't, we hire a subject matter expert. We go through the first stages of due diligence, which includes, starting with non-disclosure agreements, and then the exchange of the financials with the seller. conversations with the seller, getting the seller to know who we are and what we do and how we do it, so to get everybody comfortable with that. And then the process moves on. If it moves on from there and we're able to agree to an approximate enterprise value, a sales price, I then present it to our board of directors. So the way Mno-Bmadsen is set up, it's run by a charter that was approved by the tribal council. In that charter, it lays out our roles and responsibilities and lays out the makeup of our board of directors, which is fantastic. And our board's been key to our success in being able to close these deals because we've had a very consistent board. These deals can be very complicated. So going through this process, going through term sheets and purchase agreements and so forth is difficult. Waivers of sovereign immunity get complicated. So having a stable board has been very good. And our board's been excellent in responding to the staff's needs to move things forward. So once I meet with the board of directors, I lay out where the deal is, what our expectation is for price, for financing, how this investment benefits the existing portfolio. And again, by now they've heard through the months about this acquisition, so they know about it. They just don't know the nitty-gritty and don't know if we're going to move forward. So I present what we call a letter of intent, which lays out the big deal parameters, right? Price, market, how it helps our portfolio, financing, all those things are laid out, expected time frame to close. And then our board reviews it and votes. And if our board approves it, gives me the approval to move forward, that's really my approval to spend money. And then we go through the rest of the diligence, which we can talk. But that's kind of the process. If nothing changes materially from the letter of intent approval, we go all the way to the purchase agreement closing.
Yeah, thanks, Julio. How about you, Kip? Does it change much?
It's very similar, and we're governed similar to how Julio described too. So getting our board engaged early on is also really important. Once we've gone through that process and we do get to that LOI and start the due diligence process, then we get our entire team involved. So our CFO usually leads that process. We have outside legal that comes in. Our Chief Human Resources Officer is involved. We also involved our VP of Strategy, our COO, and try to find those subject matter experts, as Julio said, within our organization to help us do that. But that's really the time when we start looking deep into their financials and make sure we're on the same page on some of the assumptions that we've had. We'll get that valuation done. We'll do a quality of earnings. We'll really take the time to make sure that we have as much information as we possibly can. And then when we are getting to know that target acquisition more, really making sure that the culture is aligned. That's really important for us because as being tribally owned, our culture is everything, right? We respect our board so much and our executive council and our tribe as a whole. So bringing a new business into the fold and making sure that there's alignment and that how we do things, because we're different than corporate America, is just really important. So that's a big piece of it as well. And then we'll just continue to peel back the layers of the onion and make sure that as we look at our strategic plan for growth, that business we're going to be able to scale it. We're really going to be able to do it, and we're going to be able to do it with some of the team that's already there, right? A lot of times there's succession planning for these sellers, and we got to make sure that they're going to stick around long enough for us to be able to transfer all that knowledge to make sure that consistent growth can happen. And we usually have a plan for bringing somebody in to take over, but making sure that knowledge gets transferred is really important. So making sure all those things are clear and a clear understanding as we go through that due diligence process.
And you mentioned tribally owned, and I don't think we mentioned what tribes own your company. So, Julio, who is Mno-Bmadsen owned by?
So Mno-Bmadsen is owned wholly by the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians of Michigan and Indiana.
Okay.
Potawatomi Ventures is also wholly owned by the Forest County Potawatomi community in Crandon, Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
And Waséyabek is wholly owned by the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi, so sister Potawatomi tribe. So it's great.
Awesome to be seeing the Potawatomi tribes doing some great stuff.
I think leading the way in Indian country, in my opinion.
We're trying to, right?
Yeah.
Deidra, I know that our process really doesn't stray too much. We've heard Kip and Julio talk about financials. What other types of due diligence do we do when we're looking at an acquisition target, when we really get in there and look at the nitty-gritty?
Yeah, I think it's very, very similar. I think something that I would stress is as we're doing due diligence, we're also developing the transition plan. So we're communicating with the sellers, we're communicating with our staff. What does that look like going forward? What have we agreed to? What do we know is outstanding? What do we know needs work on? Is there a 401k plan that needs rolled over within a certain period of time? When are we going to look at insurance and bringing them on our plan or not? So building that transition plan as you're having those conversations, then everybody has a common understanding. Because like you said, Kip and Julio, in an earlier conversation, you agreed, the culture is so important. Right. And the due diligence process can get really tiring for everybody involved, including the seller. Yep. So you want to make sure that you're really going into the new ownership structure well-defined, hopefully energized by what they want to get accomplished out of the transaction and what we do as well. So.
Yeah, deal fatigue is a real thing, right?
It
By
sure
the time you
is.
get to the end, and certainly one thing that helps that is setting those expectations early. And Julio, you talked about the LOI, which really helps do that, right? Can you talk to us a little bit more about just like what you look for in setting out in your LOI to help that due diligence and negotiation process along?
Yeah, I think the process pre-LOI is key to setting those expectations because, as I said in the LOI, we lay out an expectation to close for my board. And that before we get there, we've already talked to the seller. We've laid out the expectations. We've talked to our attorney. Our attorneys hopefully talk to their attorney. And so the expectations are clear. Provide us information timely. We'll respond timely. We'll verify the assumptions. Actually, while I'm there, I wanted to touch on also, due diligence really is the process of mitigating risk in my mind. That's what it is. I mean, we do due diligence to try to track down any risk we can and try to mitigate it or know about it, deal with it before the transaction. It's one of the key factors, certainly, in making sure it moves smoothly through the process so you don't get deal fatigue. Again, before the LOI, we've also talked to the bank. If it's a leverage buyout, we have those expectations from the bank on closing. We've bid the financing out. Part of the bidding is how long is it going to take you to close this? They've had a peek at the financials as well. So I think key to getting the transaction to move quickly and, again, mitigate as much risk as you can prior to LOI helps you get from LOI to purchase agreement close.
Mitigating risks, I love that. So, Kip, what kinds of risks, in your view and in your experience in acquisitions, are too big of a red flags that make you walk away during due diligence?
Yeah, I mean, I think when and we talked about this earlier too, when the financials are unclear, right? If they don't have, consistently audited financials, or it's taking a really long time to get answers, or the owners are, complacent or non-responsive, right? Those start to show red flags, and that's one good thing is you start to see who it is you're going to be dealing with, right? And you get to choose: do I want to keep going or not because of those risks? And we know in Indian country, there's not a lot of room for error, right? And so we want to get it right. We've all got great stories of experience that came from failures, but we try to really mitigate that as much as possible. So those types of things, I think, and really just whether it's employment contracts or if there's any legal issues, if there's maybe lawsuits that weren't disclosed or something that kind of starts to show up. And that'll be a red flag for us for sure. And then even cultural fit, right? I mentioned that earlier. That's so important. It can't be overlooked how important it is if there are signs that somebody is not really going to be able to fit into the family, then we'll walk away. So.
Deidra, what types of things does Waséyabek look for during due diligence when we're evaluating culture?
So we want to definitely talk to the sellers, and we try to get in to talk to key employees. I mean, we talk about at our company, our best employees, and kind of an expectation is you be hungry, humble, and smart. And we're really looking for the same thing from our sellers. And that comes from a book. I didn't make that up. I think I just want to clarify. But I do think those are the characteristics that we're looking for, because if you look at this, I mean, if you want to equate it to a relationship, if you're looking to marry somebody, which our tribes are buy, hold, and grow in perpetuity, and you start to see red flags as you're dating somebody and they're not being completely truthful, or they're, not, they're just prickly all the time or whatever, you're going to rethink, well, do I want to spend a lifetime with this person?
Right.
And it's the same for us. We want to own these companies for a long time. It's a unique process for every tribe. I guess that's not true. The process is the same, but there's unique parameters for every tribe.
Right.
And then you have to decide what you can deal with and what you can't.
Yeah, and that goes back to that risk mitigation, right? You have to understand what your organization is willing to accept as a risk, which may not be the same for you, Julio, as it is for Kip, as it is for Waséyabek, right? And so it's really analyzing those risks and understanding the risk tolerance of your organization. I know one thing that I look for when I'm going through due diligence, particularly as it relates to culture, is if we are going to bring on those leaders and keep those leaders on to help run the business going forward, if they've got exit interviews that they've done and documented that, employment claims, whether it's just threatened or proceeded to litigation, those types of things I like to look at to see, okay, in these exit interviews, what was the underlying theme here? If it's management, it's a yellow flag, right? That's something that we want to address. That's something that we want to talk about. If it's safety issues, that's also something that needs to be addressed from a legal perspective. So certainly a lot of different things that you can take a look at within an organization's documentation to kind of start to. The purpose of diligence is not to find the cracks, right? But you want to find the cracks, so to your point, you can mitigate those, right?
Yeah, I think you want to confirm your assumptions, right? I think that's so you assume that they've done things properly, that you assume all the documentation is there. But I can tell you in some of the acquisitions, again, where we spoke about where we are on the acquisition curve. So we're lower middle market. Some of these companies don't have those records, frankly. So that's where it's more of a feel. Does it feel you talk to the employees? And again, sellers sometimes don't want you to talk to their employees until we're really far down. And one of the things we deal with is getting into the deal, too far into the deal. We've spent money, and now we uncover something that's unruly, something that doesn't make you feel good. And you're thinking, well, we spent all this money and all this time. Do we really want to walk away? And I think the answer to that should be yes, walk away. Don't throw good money after bad. Once you get that feeling, trust your feeling and move on. I think that's a good way to look at it. But yeah, you want as much documentation as possible. Many times there isn't.
Yeah. Any horror stories about walking away, Deidra?
Well, yes. It was actually our first operating company that we were looking to buy, and you just get that feeling in the back of your mind that says, we don't have all the facts here, and it just, nothing concrete. It was just the cultural fit was in question. And we were 3 days within closing, and we found a big problem that was just a showstopper for us. And, my conversation with the board was not pleasant because it was the first one we'd done. We weren't as efficient as we are now, so we had spent a lot of money looking into this company. But my comment was, well, we can spend this money buying this company now and spend 3 times as much unwinding this problem that we just found. Or we can just walk away from the money that we've spent right now and consider ourselves lucky. So,
absolutely. You talk about making the process kind of more efficient over time. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on lessons learned that has helped expedite your process.
I got plenty of stories.
We've got plenty of stories of deals that we shouldn't have done. And looking back now, as we look at how we vet deals and how we put together our strategic plans and the teams, that we wouldn't even look at today, right? And we had a couple deals where we acquired a technology company out west, and there was a succession plan. The owner was going to exit, and they had success commercially, but we really targeted them for not only continuing with that technology approach, but approaching the federal market. And we thought we had enough internal team expertise, subject matter experts, and we bring in some external resources as well to make it happen, and it didn't happen. And we tried to keep it going for a while. So you talk about throwing good money after bad, right? It just, eventually we just pulled out of it and just got rid of the company. But, had we really done our due diligence and been honest about that, because that's, I think, something that's really important is to be real about what do you expect for growth from this company. I mean, it's one thing to buy a company and then they become tribally owned or minority business enterprise, and maybe eventually, if they have federal experience, to get them ADA certified. But if they're going in areas that they haven't been, that's risky. It is, and you have to be okay if it doesn't work, and that can be expensive. And so those were.
So how has that acquisition changed how you've done acquisitions going forward?
Well,
then?
we've just been real about what those expectations are. I think that one of the biggest things too is getting the right people on the bus. Either they have them existing today that are within the organization, and we can bring them up, or we have somebody that we're going to place into that organization that can get the work done. I mean, because if you look at our businesses today that are successful, we have really good leadership, stable, consistent. Some people that have been with us over 10 years, and they understand our culture, they understand our values, and that's made all the difference.
100%. And just to follow up on that, I mean, key is learning from their mistakes and not making them again. One of the biggest things is, and our board and the tribal council will try to explain to them that we're investing in the riskiest sector. So, you have all the way from cash to, bonds and tradable securities, and we're in the alternative investment class. This is a tough class. The risk and return is high. So there's the risk side and there's the return side. So it's important for everybody to realize that investing in this class does sometimes end in failure. The smart part is to take that failure, learn from it, and not make that particular mistake again. That doesn't mean you won't make another one. But I think the longer you've been doing that, and kind of the collaboration we're able to do, at least between the Potawatomi tribes that we do, is fantastic for that very reason. We get to sit together and say, shoot, I shouldn't have done that. And if you guys do this, keep an eye out for this. So I think that part of it, like the sharing we've done today and we've done in the past and we'll do in the future, not only with our 3 Potawatomi tribes, but with the other Potawatomi tribes who meet regularly, is a really good way to troubleshoot what's going on out there. And I think it's valuable. Again, reminding everybody this is a risky thing we're doing. That the due diligence mitigates risk, but we're not going to find everything. Do your best.
I think that's a huge point. We can do as much due diligence, we can do it forever and still not know everything. So you have to know enough that you have categorized the risk, but just understand you're going to have surprises. And it's not because everybody was purposely trying to hide anything. It's just businesses are complex. There's just a lot of information and history and all of those things. So definitely do the due diligence. Don't skip the due diligence, but also understand there's going to be a couple of surprises afterwards.
Yeah, even market factors, right? Some things you do the best due diligence on that, but I mean, who knows? Who's going to control interest rates? Who's going to, who would have imagined, like you said, the pandemic? Nobody would have imagined that. What business is prepared for that? You just then react, and as Kip said, make sure you have really good key staff. Our success definitely is built on the backs of some really hardworking, intelligent people running our companies, our board dedication, my staff's dedication. That takes a long time to build. And that's really one of the most important things. You can't do due diligence properly without support and a really good staff, because you can't do everything yourself.
And that goes clear back to the Harvard Project. One of the main tenets of that is leadership matters. And that's leadership from the tribal council to the board, to the staff, to your support partners. Leadership matters.
Yeah, and to your point, Deidra, you're never going to find every single thing, right? But if you understand and have a good understanding of what your organization's no-goes are and what their flags are. So we are all owned by tribes. Chances are environmental issues are very important to all 3 of our organizations, right? So if we go into due diligence, 9 times out of 10, most risks can be mitigated and we can work around them. But if you understand what your no-goes are in your organization, those become priorities in the due diligence process to be able to say, all right, we know we're not going to acquire a company that has had, a massive terrible environmental impact, right? It's just not something that probably any of us are going to go into. So it's having that understanding. And Kip, you brought up strategy earlier too, right? Where within, and we've talked strategic planning a lot on this podcast, where within your strategy does this acquisition fall? And how does it fit within the other pieces of your portfolio, which is huge when you're going through that diligence process too.
Right. And really being honest about that, right? So we have a shared services model, right? So within our headquarters, we have HR, finance, IT, strategy, and marketing. And so they support all of those operations, some more than others, right? Depending upon the maturity. Our construction management firm has some of those services in-house now. But so really being able to understand that, I think, is huge. We do this 1-3-5. The 5 is an outlier, as you said earlier. Who can know what happens in 5 years? But every year we update that strategic plan, and everybody does the same format, the same scorecard. All the leadership teams participate in it, along with our VP of strategy and our officers. So everybody has they agree on it. They authored it, right? And so that's huge. So to be able to deliver, there's not any surprises on what we're asking them to do. And so in our instance, so recently we acquired electrical services contractor. We knew a couple of years ago that we wanted to do that because we have a construction management firm, a technology firm. We like professional services. We think there's some synergies between those two that could result in more business development opportunities. And we also knew that we wanted to look into alternative energy and EV and stuff like that. So this was part of our strategic plan for a while. So that was really helpful too, to have alignment around that, right? And to bring people in. And the other thing is one of our values is being authentically humble. So when we bring people in to the organization, when they approach the business and how they develop their strategic plans in that light, meaning we have an open door policy, we're going to talk through these things. Not everybody knows everything, okay? We don't have any massive egos, right? But if we can, agree on that, and we can find leaders and companies that can participate in that, it's going to reduce risk and increase our opportunity for success.
Yeah, so speaking of strategic planning, Julio, how can strategically where an acquisition target would fit affect the diligence and the way that you negotiate those documents? For example, I know you guys are in federal contracting. So if you are looking to purchase an acquisition target, whether that's, asset sale or most likely is going to be a stock sale where you might end up keeping on some of the owners, how does, where it fits in the strategy, particularly with federal contracting, how does that dictate your due diligence and your negotiations?
Well, it plays a great deal. I mean, so our due diligence in that case would be very carefully going through the federal contracts they already have, if they're already in that space. Generally, when you're in that space, you're dealing with a lot of joint ventures, mentor proteges type agreements to go through those. And again, we do have subject matter experts because we're already there. So all those things are part of the planning. And if it's not a buyout and we have to have a separate board, we talked about control. Control is incredibly important and required. So control provisions require the tribal entity to have outvote provisions. So they cannot be outvoted. The tribe has to have the final decision making. And if we do have partners, we want them to know that they'll be consulted, and we're going to talk about the strategy, and we'll talk about strategy at acquisition. So this isn't something new, but that's a really important thing. It's a thing that sometimes gets missed. And it's really hard to backtrack. So once you make the deal, if that's not clear, going back is going to be very difficult, and getting a partner to agree to provisions where they have no control is difficult. And I think, it's meant in order for these contracts that are won to hold up to scrutiny. I know the SBA has now been doing some reviews on contracts to make sure that we're not trying to skirt around the provisions of the SBA 8A program. So taking care of those early on, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Deidra, talk to us about, you've mentioned a couple of times, like, you guys are all just one person. So you guys are not certainly the ones down in the documents doing the diligence. How important is it to have a team of people as you're running through diligence?
So important. And we have internal team members and external team members. So every one of our departments, finance, HR, marketing, whatever it is, has some kind of task to do during due diligence, looking into their particular area of expertise. Then we have our outside accounting firm, and we have our legal firm, and having that team together, and then somebody internally kind of drives that process. And it's quick. It's a meeting every week. What are the outstanding issues? What do we need more information on? What information requests are outstanding? Do we have any red flags? So it's a very, very diverse, very deep team. And again, that gets a little bit tailored depending on what kind of deal you're doing. And real estate acquisition is going to be a lot less intense than an operating company. And so you tailor it to the need. And I should also add our legal team, internal legal team, is very important to that. And I want to acknowledge Erika, because you're asking us questions like we're the experts, and you're involved in every single acquisition that we do. So you have a ton of expertise there too. So
yes, I am involved in the nitty gritty. Absolutely.
Yes.
So, and that's, we talk about red flags, and we meet on a weekly basis, both internally and externally with those teams. And, acquisitions feel like they take a really long time. Julio, I think you mentioned maybe 6 months earlier from, pre-LOI to closing. And, but when you're in it, it seems to really, it drags on, but from LOI to closing can be a very short period of time. And as those red flags are coming up, it's important that everybody on the team is aware of those red flags, because something that HR finds amongst their documents, if they keep that to themselves thinking, oh, this is just an HR issue, we'll figure it out on our end. But if they're not communicating that to the rest of the team, that may be something in finance that then is directly impacted. That may be insurance and benefits that's impacted. That may be legal saying, wait a minute, now we need to go into the documents and revise X, Y, and Z. We're talking about real estate. We talked earlier about if you're buying the property or if you're leasing it. Well, you're going to want to start the process of engaging the landlord, or anybody for that matter, that you need third-party consents from, way far in advance, or way at the start of the process. We've learned from experience talking about updating processes. Yes, absolutely. Where we've learned that lesson, that by engaging the landlord too late may, in our case, actually stall the deal out, and we walked away altogether.
Yep.
Yeah. But it certainly, it is a process. I think you said earlier it gets easier, though, right? I think we can confirm for everybody out there, after having all gone through our fair share of acquisitions, it does get better.
Just to follow up on the legal, so it's also very important. I beat up lawyers all the time, so no offense, but
none taken.
No,
So
the bad attorney can be a deal killer. I mean, I'm telling you. So having a good attorney that finds solutions and not reasons to say no. For a guy like me that wants to get it closed, I don't want to hear from my attorney, oh, we can't do that, Julio. And I was like, well, maybe, but let's figure out, try ways. Sometimes it's just an inadvertent. You might have an acquisition that just didn't know. They weren't trying to not disclose it, and it's something that can be repaired prior to closing, right? And that's the kind of thing, in order to meet that 6 month, right?
Yeah.
We got to have problem solvers, whether it's all those things you said, payroll, benefits, compliance, insurance, all those things. Something comes up. We want help from our legal team, right? We want big assist. So having a good legal team is super important to getting that done.
And it's important to have a good legal team on the other side of the transaction too, because we might
Can't
be
always
doing all
control
of the
that.
stuff right, but if they're just holding up the deal and not asking for explanations, not doing their part, then that
could be a deal killer.
Yes.
Yeah, we had an issue come up on ours where there was some disagreement on employment contracts, and it kept going on and on and on, and their attorney was digging his heels in, a younger individual, and our CFO, Paul Holsley, who's the rock, he's like, you're going to mess up this deal. You're going to stop this deal from happening. He was the best. It happened. We got it done.
And he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something you have to keep in mind, though, too, is that you're going to continue to work with these people after the acquisition closes. Like the acquisition process itself is a small blip in what we hope to be a very long and prosperous relationship for everybody. So I know when I was outside counsel, that was one thing that I would tell my clients was, if you need to throw me under the bus to save the relationship that you need to preserve for post-closing, go. Like, I will gladly be the bad guy to push whatever issue needs to be pushed without having to compromise your relationship with the business people to move it forward. And I think it's important sometimes for your outside advisors to have that understanding that when that deal closes, 9 times out of 10, they get to move on to the next one and walk away. We're the ones that are here post-closing that have to deal with the repercussions of things that were done and said during the acquisition process. And I think sometimes people view acquisition as this combative, hostile because of attorneys, and I will be the first one to throw attorneys under the bus. But I think everyone needs to be reminded often that we're all working towards the same goal here. And that's to buy or sell this company so that it continues on and continues to succeed and grow.
Yeah.
Kip, Julio, any kind of like last guiding principles for people on due diligence or the acquisition process as a whole?
I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I think keeping an open mind during the acquisition process, be curious, every one of these is a little different, right? The ownership structure is different. The employees are different. Spending time, again, at the beginning is extremely important. The time you spend before you get to spending money, I call it, is really important. You know, meeting the owners, letting them know what the tribe is, the sellers, what the expectations are, being clear. Again, that takes time. And just to back what Kip said, the humility that we all show, I know because we know each other. You're the CEO, you're the leader. These companies want to know that you're accessible, that you're humble, because they'll watch you. We practice what you preach. And all of those things are important so that we can have all the technical checkpoints and diligence and attorneys and reviews and valuations and models and quality of earnings. All those things are incredibly important, but none of them are going to go and meet with the people that you're acquiring those companies and let them know that the reason you're acquiring these companies is to grow them, because our acquisitions are built on growth. We're buying a company that we feel confident we can grow. Otherwise, we're not buying that company. Not at this point in the portfolio. Early on, there was companies you would buy for their existing profitability, and maybe you weren't sure how you could grow this, but you maybe thought you could. Now, with a portfolio, we know where we can invest to grow a company. And key to that is to get in front of the people there, because, again, you're going to need them, as you were saying.
I would just add a couple of things. The owners, if they're founders, typically have put their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and have their whole families are invested in some cases, and their spouses are, it's important that you consider that, right? And be patient and recognize that as you're going through the process and you're getting closer to the end and you're thinking about post-close and that relationship, and then you're thinking about integration, right? Because those first impressions that you have with the new employees that you're going to be talking to and the new management team and how you present and how you get them involved in our story and our vision, our mission, our values is just really, really important, right? So if you're thinking about that through the due diligence process, and again, if something comes up and you're like, these two cultures are just too far apart, but that's just really important. But always, keeping in mind that, those owners have families and it can be emotional, and so you just have to be ready for that. Yeah.
I would say just don't skip diligence. I mean, it's complicated, as we're talking about. It can be, yes, you have to spend money, but I think all tribes, I know we have a story about somebody who came and pitched us on something that was too good to be true. We didn't do proper diligence, and it did not turn out well. And so that doesn't only set you back as far as money and all that, but it's credibility with your tribal members and within Indian country. There's a lot of cost to that isn't just dollars. And so do your due diligence. Don't take people's words for it. Don't, the financials are fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's probably a big red flag. You need to worry about it even more. So do the due diligence. Take the time. The deal is not going to go away because you have to spend 3 to 6 months doing diligence. If it's a real deal, it's not going away. If you've got a connection, and people will try to rush you to, I got to get this done by the end of the year. Well, you shouldn't have started in November.
Absolutely.
I mean, the last thought I would say on this was, as everybody was talking, I tell people this all the time, trust your gut. The Japanese they call it the hara. Trust your gut. If your gut feeling says this is not good, tread carefully.
Yeah.
Like you said, as soon as somebody says, well, we need to do this by a certain date, to me, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
If you tell me that and I'm not ready, it's done. Yeah, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Well, Kip, Julio, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the
pleasure.
time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much.
Wonderful.
It's just a pleasure to work with you both and share these stories and have a phone a friend network and
Yes.
say, like, I got this going on. I've never seen this one before. Really, really appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I do too. We've got a great working group, even here and certainly outside of here. It's a great resource to have. So
I think that's one of the great things about Indian country, right? And people talk about, well, if you go, you could translate this, go work in corporate America anywhere, but I don't want to work anywhere else. This is really fulfilling. It is a huge honor to work for the tribe and to do this kind of work and to know that next generation's coming in now, right? And they're watching us and learning and growing, and we get an opportunity to be a part of it and share it with each other is really cool.
Well, and how many times do you get the opportunity to work somewhere where you can see a direct impact of what you're doing on a whole nation of people?
Right.
Like, it's right there. It's only 1 degree away from what you're doing. You're not, working for faceless shareholders or whatever. And so it's very fulfilling.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And
Thank you.
thank you all for tuning in for this final episode of 2025. Happy holidays and have a happy new year. We look forward to seeing you again in 2026. And if you have feedback or additional topics that you'd like us to explore next year, we invite you to go to our website. That's waséyabek.com/podcast and provide feedback there. Thanks.